right. We should be good now. We're back with another episode, but first the sponsors. Head over to www.johnbartolo.show. Go check out a complete list of the sponsors listed there, but I'm going to say a few of them now to thank them. Please go support the sponsors. Gallo Technologies, Blackwater Ammunition, Rhino Metals, Inforce Weapon Lights, Pulsar Thermal Imaging Technology. Go buy a thermal. Be smart. Right On Optics, Kenzie's Optics. Of course, I can't not thank all of you. I appreciate everybody. I appreciate everyone's support. Shout out to Scott Volkwartson and the Flip Flop guy. We had an awesome night last night doing the Flip Flop. That guy's insane. If you didn't check out that episode, go check it out. That was amazing. It was like 2 hours of just meat in my mouth. I know. It's weird. It was a great crew. Thanks to everybody that supported that. Please like and subscribe and do me a favor, guys, if you can, leave a review. We had a special guest today, straight from back home. I know exactly the area this guy's from. We kind of traveled up and down the North Shore en masse our whole lives, but never really crossed paths the way that we should have. But I got the man behind, safe to say that, right? BJJ Fanatics, right? Michael Zenga. What's going on?
Great to be here, John.
Oh, get talking on the mic so everyone can hear you. Sorry.
I don't follow directions.
No, you're fine. It's my fault. I should have told you. Get close so everyone can hear you in this beautiful microphones. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
It really is. Now, serendipitously, you were coming out here anyway, so we managed to get together and do this. I have to ask because there's an area I'm going to go into here that I don't think you would have thought I'm going to go into. But you really revolutionized the paywall. I mean, you were like the first OnlyFans. I mean, you're really there. I mean, what made you come up with the idea and what was it born out of?
Kind of a funny thing. So, I've always been a jiu-jitsu guy. Never really that great at it, but I mean, someone who really loved doing it, and I love to get better. So I thought I was in a place in life where I just developed some real estate, and I kind of went into businesses where they were a little bit more stable, where you weren't having the huge emotional swings with real estate. Because when you're a real estate developer, people are literally spending 10 times as much money as they have. So it got to be just a lot of stress.
Right.
I mean, every closing almost always fell apart. So I opened some schools. I opened in the same facility in Woburn. It was a gun safety academy.
Okay.
Just kind of like nothing like what you do, but kind of like just so people get the elementary class across. A real estate school and also a construction school.
Okay.
So I was there, and I also had some time to
talk a little closer to this, saying they can barely hear you. Yell into it. I know you're soft spoken.
Hey.
Yeah, there you go. Go ahead.
So
thanks, TJ.
Took some time to pursue, on my own. What if we went and developed an instructional program with some jiu-jitsu people, and maybe I could learn something in the process. That was really what I was thinking.
Right.
So started fooling around with that, and I made a few different videos, Dean Lister, Leandro Lowe, Meow Brothers, that kind of thing. And they'd made a little bit of money, nothing crazy, but it was side money, but I really enjoyed the project.
Now, were DVDs still a thing at this time? Or?
We were only selling DVDs.
Only DVD,
not digital downloads.
Okay.
So I went, I saw Bernardo Faria online, and I saw him going against another really athletic competitor, and I loved the way that he used lapels and half guard and that sort of thing.
Sure.
I thought, wow, I could really learn from him. And so I called him about a video, and he ended up going with one of the more established companies at that time. But he and we kept talking, and he said, what if I came up to Boston, did a seminar? And so I sponsored that. We became friends. Then a few months later, we started playing with the idea of what if we started making this into a bigger thing? What if we started selling more, and then just sort of built from there?
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Again, we were talking before we got on the air here just about how something starts from nothing. And it literally started from nothing and got a little bigger. You start to gain traction. And
what made you think of a paywall and going all online? Was it just going with the time? Because I don't think you get enough credit for that. That's ahead of its time. Yeah. You know what I mean? To make the transition from DVD to fully online. Did you see like where Netflix was going, or were you just like, this is the way it has to be? access now. You know, I'm not going to mail you a DVD.
To consider me any kind of a visionary would be a complete mistake. Anything that happened, that success is probably because of a mistake. But if we do anything right, it's that myself and my business partners, we try a lot of stuff. And what we found in making videos was that at first, when we first started doing them, it was DVD only. We hadn't figured out how to get them online. So when we figured out how to get them online, it was a mix of you'd buy the video and you get the DVD as a part of an upsell if you wanted to. But what we found was that 95% of our customer service came from
the DVD.
Yeah, and what they'd say is, you shipped it to the wrong address. And it was, well, we don't put the address in, you guys put the address in. But there's always mail problems. The DVDs come broken. And we found is that when we finally went DVD free, customer service kind of went away. Now it's only lost passwords and that sort of thing. And I mean, maybe people having download speed issues and that kind of thing. And most of that's because of their own local service provider.
So logistics fueled the innovation, essentially.
Fueled the innovation.
It's amazing. I mean, look, I don't think BJJ Fanatics gets enough credit in the space, honestly, because of what they were able to do in terms of taking the business of jiu-jitsu into people's homes. And I think that, I know like in the shooting world, we had the Panteo Productions years ago. You'd buy the DVD and you'd see some guy do a mag dump and you thought it was like the greatest thing in the world. And that stuff was still very grainy, very choppy, even the early renditions. You have it down to a science now, to the point where you can even see the movie box or poster and you can kind of get sold on that. You know, it's Tom DeBlas flying through the air with firecrackers coming out of his ass, and it's like half guard domination. So you know how to package it the right way to make it palatable to the eye. Was that something that came overnight?
I had nothing to do with that. But the only thing I had something to do with is that we have pretty good people. I've had a lot of good fortune to meet good people. We have a guy named Ian who handles all of the design, and he does a great job with it. And I think the one thing I maybe did well enough was we were all smart enough to hold on to him.
Sure.
And
it's a huge part.
We've had very, very little turnover.
It's a huge part of it.
So I think the thing that works the most for us is our business model. Whereas I was talking about this with, we're in town shooting a video with Drysdale. And he was talking about how when he first when he won ADCC in 2007, everyone saw it at that point. He beat Marcelo Garcia in the finals. It was a big upset. And he got, I forget exactly how much money it was, but it was a lot of money up front to do a DVD from a guy. And undoubtedly the guy sold a lot more in videos than that because the guy came back and gave him more. But the model was flat fee, you do your video, and I sell as much as I can. So someone wins that transaction, someone loses.
Right.
Because he either sold it too cheap or the guy either paid too much. So what we did was we partner with the athletes, and they get a split into the point where they're excited. So with Tom, it went well to the point where he was excited to do more because now he's making more and more money. It's meaningful to him in his life. And then who's Tom friends with?
Right.
Tom's friends with a lot of big influencers.
Sure.
And that's how it is. And we've been smart enough never to really have a big dispute with anybody. I think we have over 800 coaches on the site now, and I think the general consensus from people that we've worked with is, wow, these guys are pretty good. They're honest. They do a good job. They pay me on time every month. They pay me every dollar that I'm owed.
You got to be Switzerland, right? You got to kind of be Switzerland because I'm sure you hear a lot of the internal beefs around the industry and you kind of become a sounding board. I see you making the face. I know. I'm not going to go there, but I can imagine the shit you have to eat along the way to paradise, right? You have to probably play referee to a lot of shit, right?
It always seems to revolve around one person.
Right.
But I mean, as far as that, yeah, I mean, you want to try to stay in the middle, but
that's what makes it fun, though.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we make videos. I mean, we're here to further the sport. You end up having some people you become good friends with along the line. And, I mean, some people you say hi to and you don't really talk so much to in between projects. Some people you talk to all the time. And it's just how it's going to work.
Right.
And so I've been able to develop some pretty good friendships with the guys from different teams, and just it's how it is. I mean, it's separate from our business.
Switzerland.
Yeah.
Be Switzerland. It's kind of wild to me. I was talking about this with Dana White and with a few guys that I've had on from the area, right?
Yep.
It's kind of crazy how many people, not just in the combat sports, but I've come across even in the shooting industry that came from our area. You know, you had, Dana, you had yourself, you had Jake Cutler, who I mentioned earlier, the bodybuilder coming out of Sterling, Mass. So many guys popping out of the area, Joe Rogan being another one. You know, how, I ask guys this from home, what is it? Is it something in the water? I mean, Dana has a decent explanation, but I mean, you think it's something about the area that's cranked out a lot of like these dudes, you know what I mean? Just guys that are kind of on the ball. They have a desire to be more capable, more in the combat sports or around that stuff. I think it's more than any other area in that concentration, given our age range.
Yeah, I don't know how to articulate it, but I think there really is something there. But what did Dana say?
Well, Dana said, he goes, I think Boston's just an area that it's oversaturated. People are too smart. There's too much going on in the area. You become street smart really quick. You know, we talked about that a little bit even offline. And I think it's something about that area and that time, the way that we were raised. I grew up in a predominantly Italian household. And, you took the beating, as we always used to say, every now and then, and you learned and you kind of grew up a certain way at that particular time. So anybody in that age range, 35 to 50, kind of went through all the lumps and kind of endured a certain period of time that I think was kind of, it was like the land stopped in time for a little while for about that period, you know? And I grew up with my family still sat out on the stoop, stuff like that, you know? So I understood it and I get it and I understand what he's saying. And we were all pretty bright guys, you know, going around and learning really quick. And you had to adapt quick at that time, the mid 80s, late 80s, you know, around Boston, early 90s. Growing up, you just kind of always understood that if you did something wrong, you were going to have to take the beating. And if you did something right, you probably weren't going to get a giant pat on the back. So you had to maintain that competitive edge. But I think it's something about the area.
So you were from East Boston?
Yeah.
So you're from right in the city. So I was more from the suburbs.
Yep.
So I wasn't necessarily need to be street smart, but I came from a family that was. And so it was always, I think that street smart's going to be something that's going to be passed down.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. And I think there's a desire to be more capable that was burned into a lot of us. And that's one of the things that I always kind of remembered. Everybody was kind of concerned with their own safety, taking care of themselves, getting better at certain things. I mean, if you came home, I still remember a time where if you came home with a bad report card, you were getting yelled at. Yeah, I mean, that's rare today. It's hard to do today, right? Yeah. So it's a lot of fun. And through the years, in an area where, I'm not going to say you may not expect it, but you kind of united the clans in so many ways because jiu-jitsu was very fractured throughout that period. You know, guys had schools and things like that, but it wasn't what it is now, the connectivity that it is now. And have you kind of observed that change as you went?
Yeah, there was early in the day, you weren't even allowed to go train at a rival school.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I never really understood that because it seemed very cultish, very clannish. Like just because this person trains at another place and we're not supposed to be friends, this doesn't really make a whole lot of sense.
Right. So
I was never really too into that. And I came from, luckily I had a teacher that wasn't really so worried about that either. The teacher I spent the most time with was Daniel Gazzoni from Brazilian Top Team, just a wonderful guy, really open-minded. And he encouraged me to go to different gyms when I traveled and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think I remember that period of time. It was like, what do you mean you went to that school? Yeah. Like, you know, there's a lot of that, you know.
He wasn't like that, but there were a lot of, I would hear that from.
What'd they say? You know, like,
like you shouldn't really be on the creonch, that sort of thing. And really silly.
Yeah, it was an interesting time, but I know exactly what you mean. And the funny thing is about you coming out of Mass is I didn't hear of many great jiu-jitsu schools in Mass. I heard of judo schools that were really good. Yeah. Were you starving to find people locally to work with, at least early on?
Well, I think I was probably at the judo school that you're talking about. I spent a lot of time with those guys.
Yeah.
I still do. Travis coaches me day to day.
Okay.
He's the person I spend most time with. He's one of my best friends. And I know Jimmy quite well. Mm-hmm. I didn't end up getting my black belt in judo from Jimmy, but Well, I ended up going to getting my black belt in judo in Somerville. It became to a point where Jimmy's guys were all going to the Olympics. I'm getting killed here. This is just need something a little bit more tame to sort of finish off the judo run.
Sure.
But I've learned so much from those guys. If you think you're a hard worker, meet Jimmy and Travis.
Yeah.
They have a level of work that I've never seen.
Now, you said something interesting. You went from the school to something that was a little more tame. You run into that problem a lot in Vegas too, because every gym you go in, and I train at 10th Planet here, there's hitters, and I train with Chad Lyme and a lot of those guys all the time, Richie Castro. Yeah. But you're in there with hitters. I mean, every week it's a new hitter. If I'm not getting my ass kicked by Eric Anders or Mike Chiesa or Cody Stamen or any of those guys, and they're just walking in the gym, Mike. Like, they're just like, hey, let's train. And you're like, what the fuck? And I early on, I knew I was in a special place being in Vegas with the Combatives, but I didn't realize that it is what it truly, it's your worst nightmare in so many ways. But having that opportunity is great. But yeah, you do reach a point, right, where you're like, all right, I'm 40x years old, and usually that's around the time, like, this got to calm down a little and balance the intensity.
I think in judo it happens a little earlier because the difference between judo and jiu-jitsu is that in judo you're violently colliding with the ground. Yes. So at that point, if you go ahead and you roll with a really good guy and you tapped out 5 times, now next person. If you go and get bombed 5 times in the middle of a judo roll, you start to get into your mid to late 30s. You don't heal so well.
No, you're not doing great. How did you deal? What was your worst injury?
So my worst injury is an interesting story. So I took a really bad judo throw on my neck, and the guy came and fell on the other side, so I got crunched on this side, and I just had this really strained neck to the point where I couldn't sleep on a normal bed. I had to sleep on the couch because I would use the arm as a pillow.
That's terrifying.
So I called the doctor, and I said, hey, I need to get a referral to an orthopedic person. They said, well, we don't do referrals. You're going to have to come in. Well, I'm a busy gun school and construction school owner. I don't have time for this sort of thing. I said, well, we have to give you a physical. Okay. So I went in, and so the doctor wasn't around, saw the nurse. Great. Even worse. I'm wasting my time here. So she was giving my physical, and she said, hey, I want you to get an ultrasound on your nut. I said, well, my nut's fine. I said, one's a little bigger than the other, but she said, well, I'm sure I've touched more of these than you have. I said, okay. So I got the ultrasound, and I said to the person, this is just a waste of time, right? And she said, and I started by her face, like, what are you talking about? So I went to so now I'm referred to a urologist. He said, well, you have a big growth on one of your testicles. I said to myself, please say I don't need a biopsy. And he said, you don't need a biopsy. I said, whew. He said, well, no. He said, we just take it out. You take what out? Take your nut out. So they took it out, and he said it was something like a 4-inch cancerous growth.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so I ended up being stage 2, and I got radiation, but that was 11, 12 years ago, so I'm fine.
Thank God it happened though, right? Yeah. If it hadn't happened, what would they say was possible scenarios, outcomes? Death? Yeah. Everything.
And not good.
Not good.
No.
Fuck.
Yeah, so that was so my worst judo injury sort of changed my life.
Saved your life.
Yeah.
Did you go thank the guy? You know the guy still? Through you? No? You should go.
It was completely unintentional. It wasn't his...
white belt somewhere. He's drinking. Who knows? But yeah, that's freaking... I don't think anybody could have a story to match that.
Yeah, but that was my worst injury, but it ended up being a good thing.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is crazy. Now, one thing I definitely want to get into with you, that another area you probably didn't think I was going to go to. Okay. I very early on saw the merger in my world of shooting and combatives and weightlifting and all these different things, what we would refer to as athleticism in shooting and starting to covet that. I saw early, I noticed being a young guy, people who liked lifting weights and people who liked doing combatives really liked to shoot. And I was kind of like, Yep. This all makes sense. This is all starting to meld in my head. And this is probably 2005, 6, 7-ish. Yep. time period, and I'm like, I see these worlds colliding, and in my world, in the gun world, it was very frowned upon in the beginning to be doing jiu-jitsu on the range, doing combatives on the range. That wasn't like it is today, where like you have guys like Ruben Alvarez and Tony Sempmanat, Real World Tactical, doing stuff like that. It was like taboo.
Yeah.
But you saw this early on, and you decided to start a gun school, and you were already neck deep in combatives. What made you kind of see those mergers? Was it just always there?
To be quite frank with the gun thing, I certainly have never gotten into that in the level that I'm into it with the jiu-jitsu. I went to get my own gun license, and I think there were 50 people in there. It was $100 each. And I said, how hard could this be?
That's a hell of a business model.
Yeah. So that's sort of what happened.
So you start teaching those classes, but I imagine the trickle over of people you get that compete in combatives and or are interested in that, and or combatives are interested in shooting is probably high.
Huge turnover, because the same sort of thing. I mean, it's the goal to be safe, the goal to be able to
be capable.
If something happens.
Yeah, and be able to defend yourself.
For sure.
It's wild.
Yeah.
What do you advise a lot of people when they come in and they haven't done anything, no combatives, no shooting, anything? They say, Mike, because you get this all the time, right? Where do I start? And you're like, oh, Jesus. Like, where do you even begin with them?
Yeah. Well, I'd say that if you want to learn hand-to-hand combat, that jiu-jitsu always wins when it goes style for style. So if you have a pure jiu-jitsu guy going against a pure boxer or a pure wrestler or a pure taekwondo person, the jiu-jitsu is almost always going to win.
Yeah, it's a great way of her.
Where it starts to get complicated is if you have a wrestler who's a great athlete, who's pretty good with Muay Thai, and is a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. Now we're getting to be a lot of factors, but jiu-jitsu is a prerequisite if you want to learn how to fight on the street.
I always tell people, when people ask me, I say, listen, all fighting, whether you're on a mat or not, is all a management of distance. I mean, I don't think that's an earth-shattering statement, and I think I stole it from probably 1,000 people before me. But if you look at from shooting to arrows to anything, it's all a management of distance. We all have tools, right? You might have 5 black belts, like you're saying, or 3, or somebody has this, or a little bit of that, or high school level this. Yeah. Somebody might have 2 years of trigger time, maybe a few thousand rounds downrange. You're going to use those tools and deploy those tools in different situations as they dictate themselves. For sure. And I try to explain to people from the beginning that managing the distance in any fight, if somebody's obviously a lot better at something, you want to keep a greater distance, and helping folks understand that. Do you think there's a difference in street fighting, what to bring in and what tools to use? Because you don't see a lot of guys pulling guard on the street, right? And do you have to change the way that you instruct for self-defense in any of these scenarios? Or do you stick to the fundamentals?
I haven't really instructed a lot in self-defense. I mean, it's funny, we talk about street fighting, and yeah, I guess it is certainly a little different, but at the end of the day, people that train beat people that don't train. So when you have someone who says, oh, well, yeah, I never really took any formal stuff, but I'm a street fighter. Well, typically that means someone who's not very good.
Yeah.
And so they're going to be severely overmatched by someone who trains in anything.
Yeah.
So when it comes to, I mean, if you get to the point where you're a blue belt in jiu-jitsu, where you have 6 months to a year, you're going to be able to win 95% of the fights, because 95% of the people don't even try, because they don't even go in there with a strategy. Street fighting isn't really a strategy. It's kind of like get someone in a headlock, try to throw them down.
Two cats fighting most of the time.
And you watch people on the internet. I think Rogan has a quote. He says he sees a guy yelling at another guy, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And you see them actually start fighting, and he's saying, what made you so confident? Like, you clearly didn't even have a plan.
I think we saw a lot of that back home too.
Yeah.
I think we got a lot of that. Yeah. There was a lot of guys growing up that were always like, I'm going to get you, I'm going to do this, and you're like, oh, okay. I think it comes down to how much and I think jiu-jitsu boils down to this in a lot of combatives and even shooting. it's how much you're willing to be pushed into the mud, you know, to learn, you know, and that's what it takes. And I use that analogy because I just remember, you know, high school football game, pushing a sled, you know, and being down in the mud. You find a lot of the answers down on that mat sometimes, you know what I mean? It just takes time. And I try to tell people, like, you have about 2 years of eating the mat, you know, and then you're going to start to figure it out.
It always takes time. But if you look at it, to me, that's translated over into to other sports. We make some videos in basketball. And what I found is that people that are street ballers in basketball, sort of the same thing as street fighters. I mean, there are people that couldn't make the NBA, and they might be very gifted players, but they're not as good as the people you're going to see in the NBA. And you see someone that says, well, I'm really good at arguing, but they're probably not going to be the trained litigator who's litigating all the time. That sort of
I agree with that. Yeah, I totally see that. Now, the thing that's interesting to me in jiu-jitsu and in true martial arts that I found is there's no guys that, you know, like you said, they break through that blue belt barrier, so to speak. Once you get a certain level of training, yes, it's a perishable skill, but guys tend to keep a lot of that skill set. When they come back to it, it's amazing how much jiu-jitsu and judo they stick with you for a period of time. And it's not something you lose easily. And I feel like those two martial arts in particular, people tend not to stray away from. And I think there's a reason for that. What do you think it is?
Well, I think it's a body feel, and once you start to understand the mechanics of it, it's sort of a natural thing. I mean, I think if you have two brothers together, the first thing they just start doing is wrestling. And I read a quote one time, I think it was Richard Petty. He said, do you know the date of the first car race? The day they built the second one. So it's sort of a natural thing to start wrestling with your friends, and it's just a very fun sport. It's a very fun sport to practice.
Oh, totally. But if you sit through like a Tom or a Gordon seminar, you're like, there's such a deeper understanding if you listen to some of the like of the body and the mechanics and everything else. And I'm like, sometimes some people will be like, I'm going to this seminar, insert whatever name, and I don't want to put a name in it. I'm like, you can't even go to that thing unless you have like a purple belt level understanding. But some of these guys, they keep it for such an extended period of time. And we saw that with, you know, there's the Gracies as they aged, even John Jock, some of those guys, they just at an even older age, they still have the feel, they still have the temperament to do it. It's amazing how long they can stay at a high level and still perform in those martial arts on a mat. It's totally impressive.
Yeah, the one thing, so I'd say if you watch Tom or Gordon, they're both masters of what they do, but I do think that a blue belt can get something out of it. And but as you go along more, the black belts are going to say, wow, they can appreciate the whole thing.
Oh God.
More. Yeah.
Yeah, it's impressive.
Yeah.
It's impressive to hear. I think Gordon was out here when he did Chad Lyman's seminar not long ago, and I watched some of it, just say hi to Chad and say hi to Gordon, but it was really interesting to see, you know, just him explaining things the way that they were explained in such a depth that I'm like you're young, but this is going to be what you, like, wow, you had the deep understanding.
It's scary. So Gordon and I talk a lot, and so I'll see him and I'll ask him a question about, okay, I was in side control and this guy got out. And what he will say is, no, you weren't in side control. You were in side control with your arm on the near side of the head. Your knee was on the ground. It should have been on toes. Your right arm was on his near side hip. It should have been on the far side hip. So you're already fucked the whole thing up. So, and he sees things at such a great level of detail. And that's what I found with the better practitioners. They just know more.
Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah. It's like being with we don't fully we appreciate it where we're from, but it's almost a Belichick level of understanding, like watching the game, but you're not watching the game like a movie. You're watching the little details every step of the way. And that's something that's very difficult to master.
So Gordon in particular, what I've seen with him is that he's the best diagnoser of problems that I've ever seen. So he will going to look at something, and the assessment he'll give of right afterwards isn't normal. He can sit there and he'll give you just, like, there's a picture in his mind of everything that happened, and here's the sequence where it happened, and here's what you did, and here's what you should have done.
Have you considered making BJJ Fanatics something, and I may be spitting out some of the syrup here, but have you considered it being almost like how film is coming in huge, obviously, even at a high school level, they're able to break down plays and football and everything. Have you considered, some package that allows people to break down their own matches on your, I mean, I don't want to get into like the secret sauce, but
I think at some point you're going to see a product where for a certain amount of money, you're going to be able to send your videos to a certain,
and they'll clip it,
and you'll see it to a certain person, like a certain instructor in the store, and they'll write back to you with feedback. Now, as far as making highlight films, sort of like high school kids do for college, I haven't really thought that through. I like it.
Yeah, I think because I see what's out there for, you know, there's a couple of them, but they have like Huddle and everything else in certain software that breaks down like every little play, every little thing. Something like that. Like I'm starting to really enjoy the new Peyton Manning's doing it, where they like kind of they'll play the game, but it's him commentating on like what's going on. And
with his brother?
Yeah, with his brother. Have you seen that?
Oh, it's gone viral.
Yeah, it's crazy.
They make fun of each other, and it's great.
It's freaking crazy. Yeah. But I'm not saying that jovial or that type of playful behavior, but like I think something that breaks it down, like you can have your tape broken down by Gordon or Mike or whoever for X fee. I feel like that's like the next like thing that might be missing if somebody wanted a full critique of what they're doing and what they're doing wrong, because the devil is in the details with all those martial arts.
So I think when you start to get to the financial perspective, there's nothing more profitable than sitting there and making a whole video for mass use. As we get to a point where these guys start to exhaust their options with their library, yeah, I think we'll get into that. But as far as, I mean, these guys make real money. I mean, the guys we're talking about, I mean, they're making millions of dollars,
right,
just from instructional videos. So I think it was pretty extraordinary with the last Who's Number One. So Mike, who dropped me off here, Musa Messi, such a great kid. I'm very close with him. He went and he made a preview and said, "I'm in the video. I have a new leg attack I'm working on." So he went out and he got it in about 30 seconds, and it started this, and he named it the Mikey Lock, and it started a big thing online. Did he see it before? Did he not? Then in the main event, now Gordon, who was going against a lower level guy, he's a high level UFC guy, but he's not a high level grappler. I mean, a real tough guy. I don't want to say anything bad about him, but he's not a high level grappler. So he goes out and he passes Gordon's guard. He takes his back. He starts to sink in the choke. Gordon escapes, and they have the match. Gordon comes back and taps him out. Now, it was an exhibition, so the match kept going. But I think afterwards he was asked about that. Wow, could you believe that this guy was able to take your back? And he said, yeah, of course. I was just trying to sell videos from my back escapes course. So we've sort of changed the game in that way, when that the athletes are making their real money making instructional videos.
Yeah,
they're making orders of magnitude more money from their instructional videos than they are competing.
Now, I'm glad you brought the money thing up, because that's a good thing to get into with this. It used to be said that there's no money in jiu-jitsu, right? Right. Now, are you seeing that change a lot? And are you seeing more guys start to make a living from jiu-jitsu regularly? Not just Gordon, but just, you're seeing guys start to do it beyond just the gym.
For sure. I mean, I love Gordon, but he's not the only guy making a lot of money. Now, he and John sell the most in our store, but there's a lot of people making excellent incomes from our videos.
And what do you look for in a guy when you do a video?
Is he or she a good teacher? Because that's what's really going to matter. Let's say we get somebody out there who's just this crazy jacked competitor, right? And if you look through their Instagram and there's no evidence that they own a shirt, and we don't
know if Nicky owns a shirt. He may not.
I can't verify that he does.
Just kidding, Nicky.
Yeah, he actually sells okay. But for instance, like his takedowns and his back takes, they're really good. But for instance, let's say, are you looking at someone and saying, hey, I really want to learn from this? Because our buyer is a fat 40-year-old blue belt. That's who we're gearing our courses to. And are they looking at this and saying, this is someone that I could learn from? Right. And if someone's a really great competitor, someone being a really great competitor is not necessarily the person you want to learn from. You want to learn from the people with the best technique.
I agree with that.
And if you think about it, our best seller is a 55-year-old guy who doesn't walk that well. But people look at him and say, wow, if he can do this and he can explain this at such an incredible level,
it's pretty amazing.
Who could teach me something. Yeah.
Yeah, not always the best competitors are the best teachers. That's a fact.
And sometimes they are. Sometimes we have a lot of multi-time world champions in there, but say someone is a real young guy and they do like to turn upside down, that sort of thing. Well, it's going to alienate you, and I are probably not going to want to watch that.
No.
Yeah, no.
No, I say every day, Mike, I'm not doing fucking cartwheels and flying through the air. I'm like, it's not happening every morning.
For sure.
For sure. Now, there's been all kinds of debate. I want to get your take on this, on kind of standardizing and figuring out the belting system, of course, in all these martial arts. But speaking specifically to jiu-jitsu, do you believe in the belt system, or do you think the belt system is the worst thing that ever happened? Some don't even have a belted system, as you know. But how do you feel the jiu-jitsu system, with the explosion of jiu-jitsu, has handled the belting?
I don't really like it. I think that you get guys in there that are clearly like they compete in no-gi events where there are no belts, and then they go back and then you see the guy's a blue belt, like, okay, this is pretty nutty.
Yeah.
And you see a lot of that. I mean, you saw Nicky Rod as a blue belt, won a silver medal at ADCC. He's obviously, now I understand that belts are not an indicator. I mean, being able to compete at a high level isn't necessarily an indication of how much you know, but I like the way they did it in older times, when basically you were a white belt until your belt got dirty, and then you were a black belt. And so that's sort of how it worked. You're either a white belt or a black belt, because just because someone's a black belt doesn't necessarily mean they're a high level competitor.
Right.
I think it's, at some point, black belt should mean a level of competency. But for instance, I know Travis Stevens, who I'm very close with. I mean, he would say, when I would say, "Oh, this person's a brown belt world champion," he would scoff and say, "That's like, I mean, why would you want to? That's like being the world's tallest dwarf. Why would you want to do that?"
Right.
And so, because someone who's winning a brown belt world title, they're typically going to be a top 5 competitor at black belt. Why aren't they just a black belt competitor? I don't think it's great. I think that there should be one level under black belt. Now, I think that for tournaments and that sort of thing, it's better, because you're going to get a lot more people.
Yeah, more buy-ins. Yeah, more divisions.
Yeah, because otherwise the divisions might get too big. But now that I am a black belt, I think that
there's a risk in too many divisions, and that's why I know you don't have anything to say on this, but you may, but I don't know. But if you look at fitness, right, there's a gazillion divisions now.
Yeah.
Bikini, fit, aesthetic, this, classic, everything. Now, the downside bodybuilding ran into is now everybody's a pro, right? It's become that. Yeah. And I worried, and I had talked about it with a couple high level guys I've had on. I'm like this belting system, like, where is it going? Tom had an interesting explanation. He believes time should always be the indicator. It should always be time. But some guys don't feel that way. They feel like it's competency. Like, here, the huge thing is, it's how good you are against some of these guys. But I'm 41. How good am I going to be against some of these guys? So you always wonder about the system. And I know it's been much debated within the ADCC and everywhere else about what is IBJJF, whatever it's going to be, the rules and criteria. And do you feel like that right now they have it as close as it's going to be to perfect? Or do you still feel it should be like 2 belts to 1? And is that even practical to happen? And would it ever?
Luckily, I'm not in charge.
Right.
Now, at the end of the day, now that I'm saying this out loud, I'm going to contradict myself. What they're doing is obviously working. They're just out at Master Worlds, and there were 8,000 competitors across a bunch of divisions. The sport's growing. If the sport continues to grow, I continue to sell more videos. Let's keep doing whatever. Yeah,
whatever they prescribe.
So I think that the IBJJF, in overall, I know a lot of people give them some slack here and there. They're doing a pretty good job.
Yeah.
And they're leading. They have a federation that sort of sets the standard. I can appreciate from running a company how hard that is to do. And as far as competing in their events, they run smooth. There's some prestige there. And I think the people at ADCC are doing an incredible job.
Do you find yourself mentoring a lot of guys now because the role you're in?
No, I think I answer questions as friends and that sort of thing. But I have, if anybody we work with has a question on their own life, whether their own business life or whatever it is, I'm happy to answer it and spend some time with them.
Because there's a lot that falls on your shoulders when you become the guy, to host a lot of the stuff, and you become kind of the premier, launching pad for a lot of guys, and that's how I view BJJ Fanatics. I think it's a phenomenal place to grow your platform and to develop you, not just as you said, not just a fighter anymore, but as an instructor, and as someone that once you get your blessing to be an instructor to the masses. I think that says a lot, and I think it puts you in a position maybe you didn't account for in the beginning, where it's like I said, maybe it's playing referee, but sometimes it's a mentorship role in so many ways, and it's developing kind of their business sense, because a lot of these guys, and I love them, a lot of them are rockheads when it comes to business, and you sit down with some of them and they have no plan beyond jiu-jitsu. Do you find yourself in that position a lot?
No. The guys, so if I were to sort out, I would have said, yeah, these guys are all a bunch of meatheads. When you sit down with them, they're usually pretty bright people.
Right.
Yeah. And it's not just guys now. We have some girls that are selling well too, but no, typically jiu-jitsu is an intellectual sport. So if they've figured things out, they typically tend to be smarter than you think they'd be.
Genius.
Yeah, they are. I mean, so as far as there's a few people that aren't rocket scientists, but a lot of them, the ones I spend time talking to, they're bright people.
And they get the idea of what you're trying to do for them, right?
I think that we've been pretty transparent. I think that there's a lot of trust on both sides.
Yeah, and that's not easy to earn.
Yeah.
It takes time, and it takes time, and you've had a good core group for so long.
Yeah.
Has there been any ideas to venture into other areas beyond BJJ?
Well, we have we do basketball, we do football, we do, but nothing has taken off like BJJ and fighting has.
Yeah, I think I saw the basketball one, but I think, I think jiu-jitsu has that infectious culture that I think it runs a lot deeper in the organic,
What I think it is that jiu-jitsu is a practitioner sport for adults. So jiu-jitsu is great because you can do it until you're an old person. Whereas if you're a football player, what % of the football players are playing after 18 years old? Very few.
Very few.
And so, and what % are playing after 22?
Mm-hmm.
Very, very, very few.
Yeah, it's a better pyramid.
Yeah. So, and the same goes with soccer and basketball. They play a little bit, but anything like that, and people are buying it for their kids. They're not buying it because they're sitting around obsessing. How do I get my half guard better? Yeah.
Now, I have to ask this now. Along the way, when you started BJJ Fanatics, there had to be a moment. Was there anyone you worked with that you were like, wow, I can't believe I'm working with this guy?
I think all of them at the beginning.
Of course.
Yeah.
Anyone that stands out?
All of them. It was like that for every single one. Well, these are my heroes.
You're just like, this is great.
Yeah, this is great.
Walking in the gym, like this.
I'm learning something today. I get to get a free couple of tips.
Yeah, no,
and to some degree, I think it's still there's still some of that.
It's magical.
Yeah. It's the best job in the world.
Yeah, you got to make something that may have started as a hobby at a younger age, into something that's a legitimate, thriving business. Yeah. And I think sometimes that's great, and sometimes you're like, I can't believe I'm doing this.
Yeah, I think that's how every day is. I think I look at reports and I'm surprised anybody bought anything. I'm surprised that we got to a point where we're shooting 100 and 150 videos in a month, and they're all great at what they do.
Right.
It's to a point where I don't even have time to meet every single person we're filming with.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah. So because I'm not in the office every day, sometimes I'm traveling. A lot of our shoots happen away from, so it's not because I don't want to, it's because it grew to a point where we never thought it would. Now,
are you pitching them the ideas, or are they pitching? Do you have guys that are pitching you all the time?
We get a fair amount of people contacting us.
I can't imagine what that looks like.
But no, we talk to other people too, and yeah.
That's wild. I can't imagine what your DMs look like. Amount of people that are like, "Hey, I want to do a thing,"
Yeah, we get a lot of that, but we try to. What we think is this person going to be a good instructor, and will they sort of add to the community? And just because someone it's a no now doesn't mean it's a no next year.
Right.
Yeah.
No, that's true. A lot of times you have to it's like a sauce. You have to let it boil a certain amount and
everybody starts somewhere.
Yeah.
And the funny thing too is that when you listen to a lot of these people, they weren't always that good at the beginning.
Right.
They kind of stuck with it.
And that's the key.
Yeah.
The key, I tell guys all the time, Mike, I always say this, in business and life and in anything, it's a war of attrition. Survive long enough and you'll be the last man standing. Yeah. I don't care if you're a bagger at Stop and Shop or anywhere. I just aged myself, but any grocery store,
still around.
You will be head bagger one day. Just stick around, you know, and it'll come. It just takes time. And it's the same thing in jiu-jitsu. If you hang around long enough, if you start looking around the mat and seeing less people you started with, you're going to be further along.
And especially if you go, the other thing too with jiu-jitsu is all about problem solving, and so is life. And with BJJ Fanatics and the platform we have, I hope that we can shorten the curve a little bit, make them learn a little faster. The number one complaint that our buyers have in jiu-jitsu is that they just don't have enough time.
Yeah,
so
I can see that.
Maybe some of our videos shorten the time that they have to learn. I think that's our goal.
Yeah, I think you're right, but how to make it like a Rosetta Stone of jiu-jitsu is always difficult. That's the tough thing to master, right? Yeah, for sure. Maybe it's audio, maybe it's more forays into different areas that you haven't quite thought of yet. But now we have a lot of changes coming, right? You got the Metaverse, you get so many other things. You have to pay attention to these things and what it's going to look like. Jiu-jitsu in the Metaverse.
Yeah, you have to be careful because, I mean, we're so dependent on the social media. So if you think about in 2010, 2015, if we said, who are the most powerful people on earth? You're just going to have a list of world leaders. You're going to go by the most powerful military countries. These days, I think you have a mix of world leaders and social media companies
of course.
That go across. So these companies have, it had happened fast, unbelievable amounts of power over the companies. So we've had to say, like in our group and that sort of thing, calm down, don't go attacking people and making this a thing of something that might not have seemed like a big deal to you and me growing up in the Boston area. The powers that be now consider that a big deal.
Mike, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy now.
We live in a crazy world.
I'm glad you're going into that because it is absolutely nuts. And I keep telling all my jiu-jitsu guys, you guys are next. There's an assault on being a dude, you know what I mean? And like, or being a chick and doing, you know, stuff like this. There's a huge assault and you guys are kind of all hanging out in the weeds. And I see all the comments, see all the stuff. Like I got Jeremiah Vance messaging me. Like it's bad out there and they're coming for you guys next. Are you kind of aware of that?
I'm not worried about it. I think that, well, I mean, if you look at the woke group, I mean, they're not 100% wrong. Like if you're out there and you're legitimately spreading racial hate and you're spreading, you're after certain groups, I don't think that you should be someone that people support. The problem gets is when they start overstepping and you start to say a pronoun wrong or whatever it is, and then now they're after you and for what? And a lot of times it's about power. It's even to the point where you can question, well, how useful is this vaccine for people that are in no danger, to the point where that can get your channel canceled. Like we've overstepped so far that it's gotten to be pretty crazy. Yeah,
I don't think it's going to stop, Mike. I don't think it's going to stop. I think it's going to continue. The only way to stop it is to vote the people out and know that they'll lose their job. That's the only way it stops.
Well, I think that's going to happen in 2022.
We hope. Yes. But it's a scary thing, you know, this whole move to displace, whether you call it toxic masculinity or even toxic feminism, any of those things, that's what they refer to it as, 100%. You know, and that's what they want to do. They want to displace it. They want to say, you know, this segment is too overstimulated, but we've all found that these are great outlets to utilize. And I got into it with a few fighters. We talked about it. You know, now you want everybody, like you said, him, her, so I'll bring it up. Now you want to allow males to grapple female. Like, it's just out of control. And how do you sort that out?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
How do you sort that out?
We're starting to get into new territory that I never really thought of.
It's insane.
Yeah.
And you can't condone it, because I even had Claudia Gadeja on here, and I had a few other fighters, and I said, would you want to like basically sacrifice your records and put yourself up against, you know, a male? And they're like, no. You know, a lot of them say no. And I think women work hard for those records, and I think that's insane.
That's insane.
It's insane.
Yeah.
And what's it going to take? Is it going to take a woman going in the ring with a male in a UFC fight or in a one championship fight?
Now, if someone decides, now this isn't something I really think a lot about, but if someone decides, hey, I'm a male, I want to be a female, have at it.
It's happened.
Sure. Yeah. But then again, if you want to go and you want to beat someone in the state finals of the wrestling, that's now crazy. Like,
it's heavy.
Yeah. So that doesn't seem fair.
It's heavy.
Yeah.
And when we grew up, that was considered insane. Insane.
I would think so.
Yeah. You'd be like, what do you mean?
Yeah, this is nuts.
But do you see it going that way, or you think it'll stop?
So, what I wonder is, and me and Danaher have talked a lot about this, is this issue, like for instance, you know what the number one topic is in the military right now?
What?
Transgender issues. And I think what percent of the military is dealing with transgender issues?
One of one.
It's a small
1% of 1%,
right?
yeah.
So the question becomes, what are they trying to make us not talk about when they're talking about this issue, which clearly isn't a big issue?
Exactly.
And this is now the number one topic. Like, how did this happen? So, I think we've learned that, people have agendas, groups have agendas, and, we're going to use this as a Trojan horse. Like, why are we even talking
destabilize?
about this? Yeah.
It's terrifying.
It seems silliness.
It's absolutely terrifying. And I don't know how, as larger entities like yourself, I don't know how you push back on it in a way that we don't care about getting canceled in our deals. It's the world we live in is different, but I think it's a hard thing to articulate until it happens.
Yeah, but again, luckily the group that I'm selling to is primarily males in their 40s, and so males 30s, 40s, males that are 30s and 40s, regardless of their racial or background, their racial or their ethnic backgrounds, they're rough and tumble guys. They like fighting. They're gonna not really be as offended as the normal people. So I'm not so worried about our group.
It's a push, though, to soften the universe is what it is. It's essentially a push to destabilize. And I know we're dancing around the greater picture, but it's really is a way to say, we're going to take this capable group, whatever it is, whether it's shooting or martial arts, and we're going to destabilize it by making anything you do as a man, oh my God, I can't believe you used a razor and shave. We're going to make it toxic. You know what I mean? We're going to make it, like it's not okay. I can't believe when
there's
I thought,
a lot of that going on.
Yeah. I thought the world was just fine with a little recess street fight.
Yeah. I'm perfectly fine with if people want to figure things out on their own. And
mutual combatants. That's why it existed.
And so, we are as a society getting a lot softer, and I truly don't understand it. Obviously, in the last couple of years, it went to a different level with the virus thing. I don't think that anyone can look at the response to this and say that it was rational on any sort of level. I can't even begin to understand it.
Yeah, it's really scary, and I do think I have a guy, and I don't say this with any fanfare. I think it's going to take literally a male getting in a ring with a female for the press and everybody no, there's a difference. Yeah. There's a difference, and you're not understanding why these things exist. These constructs.
I haven't really thought about that. I hope that isn't something that isn't fair. But there's genetic advantages. I don't think that would be a smart thing.
I don't think so either. No. But I think we're going in that direction. Scary.
It's funny to think, would you have thought 10 years ago there could be a civil war? No. Would you think now there theoretically could be, where it's sort of
100%?
It's not off the table.
Yeah, my theory, Mike, on it, and this gets into a bigger thing, for everybody listening. My thing on it is, you touched on it. It's a move for power. I've said it many times. It's a move for power. It's a move for power and influence. Yeah. And what happens is all these guys are beholden, going all the way back to Massachusetts. Charlie Baker, I know him. I coached his kids at Swampscott High. I know those guys.
Is he a good guy?
Yeah, essentially a good guy. And I know he's a rational thinker, but what happens is they get pressure. Okay, and the pressure, the pressure causes the folding. Yeah. Look at Gavin Newsom. He's all in, Mike. He's all in. Like he's all in for the cause. Whatever it is. He's a total whack job. Yeah. And you're seeing a lot of that. I mean, I've said it on the last podcast. Look at Nancy Pelosi. I mean, who elects her? Who elects her?
I can't even.
Who elects that woman? She's 100.
Yes.
And if you're listening to this and you're from the NoCal area, who elects her?
She personifies the phrase "rules for thee, but not for me."
Exactly. And there's a lot of that. And where I think that, you brought up a good point. You're like, the woke culture isn't all wrong, right? I think at the root of a lot of things, they're not wrong. Like I've said it 100 times regarding the vaccination. If your doctor advises you to get the vaccine, go get the fucking vaccine.
100%.
If you did research and you just feel strongly against it, it's your body.
If you want to wear a mask, go wear a mask.
Yeah.
But I mean, so I'm here in Las Vegas where there is a mask mandate.
In the casinos.
In the casino. So if you...
you know why that is? Because of California's influence over the governor.
But Vegas is probably the most indoor city in the United States, right? Because people go...
Sure.
Most of the attractions are indoors. So when you're walking through the casino, you have to... I mean, you don't really have to, but you're walking through...
Half-ass attempt.
Yeah. To wear a mask. And they're saying you have to wear it unless you're eating, drinking, or smoking. Well, they lost me at smoking. So now if people say, sir, can you put in your mask? No. I just walk through without it. It's ridiculous.
Did you hear about the fight in one of the casinos?
No.
I don't think everybody knows this. This is kind of private information, so I'm not going to use names. There is someone who got into a fight in a casino. Okay. I'm not going to say who, but they're a decent level person. They're known. But they literally said, arrest me.
Yeah.
Arrest me. Because the reason the mask mandate exists in Las Vegas is because Newsom pressured Sisolak to put the mask mandate on, or he was going to shut down travel from California to Las Vegas for the casinos. So that you and I can relate to this in terms of context. It'd be the equivalent of like Mohegan or Fox, or Foxwood saying, you have to wear a mask if you're going to come down here. So it's the pressure from the other states that require it. Otherwise, they would have probably tossed it because they know it's a freaking joke.
It's a complete joke.
I'm not a medical expert, okay? So I'm going to say that because I know everyone's chiming in, but I'm not a medical expert. I will say, I think we all can agree that this is about power. They've given Dr. Fauci incredible power and unworldly.
And the next time he's right will be the first time.
Exactly. 100%.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's insane to see, and we're supposed to just swallow it like it's cool. So when you ask the question, revolution, right? 10 years ago, we would have... I think there's a lot of people that are marching towards what people are referring to as the Great Awakening, and there's going to be an awakening. And I think you're going to see it possibly in the midterm elections, and that's the one thing that could save the slide. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, people want one thing. They want jobs. Yeah. But I think they have to put some type of term limits, and they have to buckle up what these jobs look like. And I think there has to be some understanding that you can't come into government with the salary that you got given to you, and then all of a sudden you're worth $150 million.
It seems that all happens.
It seems like that happens.
Someone told me that there's a guy making a living with an information business online where all he does is he tracks Peter Pelosi's trades. Wow. Who's Pelosi's, I think that's his name. And the guy, he's like Nostradamus. I'm
going to have to write that down. Yeah. If you know the website, you got to send it to me.
I will.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I read about that.
Yeah, and look, it's very common. It's gone on for 1,000 years.
And insider trading does not apply to congressional members somehow. They exempted themselves somehow.
Insanity. Yeah. And this has been going on for a long time. Yeah. I mean, we grew up in Massachusetts. It was like probably next to Chicago, the king grift state.
Yes.
I mean, you can't get anything done in the state of Massachusetts or in the better part of New England without some level of juice. There's no two ways about it.
Growing up, it was known as greasing the politician.
Yeah, you had to get the grease. So when you see things like we've seen with Biden, like 10% for the big guy or the laptop from hell, you get it. It's like that. I was like, really? People are shocked by that?
What I don't understand is that when you talk to them about it, they say, "Oh, yeah, that's all silliness." No, there was an actual laptop that the media just refused to report on. Like, what are we talking about here? And so few people knew about it that it actually would have swung the election.
Oh, did you see the thing on the Kennedy assassination, the special?
No.
There's one on, I think it's HBO or Showtime. Okay. It's pretty fucking good.
Really?
Yeah, it's really good. And it breaks down how they were influencing media then. It's nuts.
Yeah.
It's absolutely nuts. And the amount, media is essentially bought. You know, it's bought, and it's owned by 4 or 5 people. If you really break it down, I'll send you a sick video on it.
Okay.
Blow your mind. But yeah, essentially all the media space is bought and paid for by someone. Let's put it that way. That simplifies it down to the simplest thing. And that's why I think you're seeing podcasting and YouTubing and certain things become so prominent. But there's a scramble to sequester it.
Well, I don't think that, I mean, the way that reporters are rewarded and compensated isn't, did you report the news accurately and fairly? I don't think that's even being discussed.
Right.
The question is your viewership. Did you follow the company agenda? I mean, from what I understand, CNN, Jeff Zucker has a very clear agenda that he gives the reporters, that they have to stick to the script.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And they're a dumpster fire right now.
Oh.
I mean, you got Cuomo, he's out. Both of them are out. But I mean, you got
I think they have to they're talking about bringing Chris back though.
If they do, that's a total disaster.
He's the only one who gets ratings. Doesn't that make them look pretty stupid?
Insane.
Yeah.
I mean, he sent an email admitting to grabbing a chick in front of her husband at a function or something.
Was this Chris?
Yeah, this was Chris, not Andrew.
Yeah, it was his boss too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was like
normal stuff.
Yeah. Like we're not coworkers anymore. And like he straight up groped her.
Yeah, so I can grab a handful.
Yeah. Why not, right?
Yeah.
And he sent an email. He acknowledges
he's
it.
The most holier than thou person you'll ever meet.
Insane.
Insane.
How does he get away with it?
I have no idea.
That's what I wonder is who has now the Glenn Maxwell thing will come out, right? We'll get some of that. We'll get some. We're not going to get all.
Well, it sounds like there were Republicans and Democrats on those planes.
100%.
Yeah.
We'll get some.
Yeah.
We're not going to get all.
Surprised she's still alive.
Brother.
Yeah.
I'm stunned. But you know they're going to put her away for 1,000 years. They have to. She's going in a hole, no matter what she gives them. And they're going to take that and throw that into a fucking fire.
100%.
Whatever they give her.
Yeah.
But I think she's got the goodies on everybody. But it kills me because now they want to make Gates Gates is trying to position himself as a Nobel Peace Prize guy.
Bill Gates?
Yeah. And he's like right in the middle of all of it.
He was on the fights, wasn't he?
20-something times or something. Yeah. It's fucking crazy. It's crazy. And he gets they let him get on TV and he talks about vaccinations like he works in a lab with a white coat. Yeah. It's fucking crazy.
It's funny how we can idolize people and not just say, you know, this is a really smart computer programmer, right place, right time, who's a complete fucking whack job. I mean,
his wife divorced him.
Oh, yeah.
And if you tell me it had nothing to do with the Epstein thing, you're out of your mind. You are out of your mind.
But listen, she waited a long time to divorce him.
Yeah. She wanted that money. Yeah. She'd wait till the stock price was just right.
I don't know what's going on,
but she was supposedly dead set against him doing anything with.
And weren't they the most holier than thou? This is how you do it. We're the perfect couple, and like.
You know, if you look into it, and I'll send you this video. Him, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Clinton Foundation, they own like everything. I know. They quietly own everything.
They own like all of the farmland in the U.S.
It's insane.
Yeah, or a lot
insane.
Yeah.
And then there's Soros mixed in there. It's nuts.
Crazy.
It's insane. Now, the funny thing is, tying it all back in before we wrap, is you had the Jiu Jitsu gyms literally putting paper on the walls and still functioning through all this. And I don't think they accounted for the amount of new gun owners, Mike. I don't think they accounted for the amount of people that would go underground and continue to do their thing. And I think in many ways, the Jiu Jitsu gyms have become like, you know, you become like all you coaches have become like the modern day John Connors. Like if you're with us, you are the resistance, essentially. And that's an interesting thing to think about.
If you're doing jiu-jitsu, by definition, you're not really a germaphobe.
Right. And you ain't stopping.
No.
You ain't stopping. Doesn't matter. You're going to find someone's basement, someone's garage, someone's something. You're going to still practice.
Well, at the end of the day, I mean, it was 2 weeks to stop the spread, but it's not 2 years to never try to get a virus. I mean, that's too hard to do.
Insane.
Yeah.
Insane. Now, I feel bad. You got to go back to that. You're in the belly of the beast.
It's okay. The only thing that drives me nuts on a like wanting to use a flamethrower like nuts is the fact that my kids are still wearing masks in schools.
That's crazy.
They don't wear masks in Florida. There's no outbreaks there. You know, Florida right now is the lowest COVID in the nation, and they're doing nothing. How do you explain that? I've never even heard one of them try to explain it.
I can't explain it. I'm not going to try. I think DeSantis has a pretty good hold on his state. Let's put it that way. And I think he has a lot of the right folks in the positions that he needs him to be able to handle that state the way that he has been. And I'm choosing my words carefully, but I think he has the right people around him to be able to say, we're going to make these moves. They're going to be successful because I want them to be successful, and my team is going to ensure that they're successful. And that's running a business, that's a difficult formula to be able to deliver on.
He seems to be a real capable person.
Very. And I don't think he's going to leave that. I don't think he's going to run. I think he'll run later. I don't think he's going to run now. I think he knows he's better off staying in that state because it's kind of like, think of it like this. Why would a good college football coach leave the college they're at? Like if you are at USC or Alabama or any of these schools and you're killing it year after year, it got to be a hell of a thing to lure you away. Yeah. So he knows for the next 3.5 years, 4 years, he can shit roses. So I don't know if it's going to draw him out just yet because he can slow play that hand, and why wouldn't you?
The one thing I worry about the favorite candidate in the Republicans running is that he turns out the Democrats like no one else. So you wonder, would DeSantis not be an easier win?
Well, there's that. And I know you're talking about the elephant in the room. If Trump runs, is Trump too polarizing to one segment? I think it comes, I would love to, I know it won't happen. I just know it won't. It's not likely, let me say this, based on who I know. It would be great if I saw a Trump Tulsi Gabbard ticket. It would probably bring enough over to do it because I think a lot of people like her. I mean, she got run out of the party.
I like her.
Yeah, a lot of people do. A lot of people do. She's coming on. I'm going to get her on the show.
Really?
Oh yeah. She's I think she brings enough of the, I would say, little D Democrats, with her that are, because there's, and you see this with the school, there's a lot of gun owning blue guys and gals running around out there, and they don't know. That's why they've been very slow with the whole ATF thing and everything else, and a lot of the gun control stuff.
Most of the Democrats that I know aren't looking to defund police or they're looking to live normal lives. I mean, they're not looking to cancel people over pronouns and that sort of thing. They're not radical like the ones that are being pushed in the media.
The way I try to describe mass is I try to say, draw a line through Boston. Yeah. If you go up to the North Shore, the edge of New Hampshire, Maine, you're going to get a lot of right-leaning folks.
Yes.
Do with that what you will. I say some are Democrats, but they're Kennedy-era Democrats. Yes. And it's a different kind of Democrat.
You know how many Democratic governors there's been since Dukakis?
One, right? One.
Because even they don't trust the Democrats.
Yeah. Just one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we had what? Weld, Salucci, what's her face was in there.
Duvall was the only one.
Duvall was the only one.
Yeah.
What was her name? She was the one that was the.
I don't know.
You remember?
Romney was for a while. Right?
Romney was, but there was the woman in there. I always forget her name. After Salucci.
Christie or something.
Yeah, I forget her name. If anyone remembers, let me know. Yeah, I'll have to look it up, but I feel like she's the forgotten one. Yeah. But then, right back to the script.
It wasn't long though.
No, she stepped in when he took an ambassador's role or something, didn't he? Yeah. And that was what it was. But she was the lieutenant governor at the time.
Yeah.
Can't remember her name. I always forget it. But listen, bro, Mike, it's amazing having you on. I mean, I really appreciate you coming out and taking the time and talking about some of this stuff. I know your time's tight and you just kind of pop it in. You're in town. What else do you have going on? What's new? Let everybody know where they can find you, how they can reach you, and what you have coming up.
Well, I think you can see any of our programs at bjjfanatics.com. We have over 800 instructors there. I'm around.
Easily accessible.
I'm easily accessible.
Where are you next?
Where am I next? I don't even know. I'm going to Florida to see my family after the holidays.
Boom.
Yeah.
Nice. COVID free.
Yeah.
Restriction free.
It's like being in 2019.
Seriously. Yeah. And it's like going in a time machine.
Yeah.
Hey, listen. Have fun. Have fun for me. What part of Florida?
Palm Beach area.
Nice. Yeah.
West Palm, yeah.
Relax.
Yeah.
Listen, I appreciate you coming in. It means the world. It's really a favor. I'm glad you like it in here too, by the way.
Yeah, awesome. The decor is perfect.
Perfect, right?
Yeah.
I figured you'd like it. Listen, I can't thank Mike enough for coming in. Guys, I know everybody's been sharing the link in here. Go check out BJJ Fanatics. Go check out everything Mike's been working on. Awesome stuff. If you want to see the best of the best, he's got them all there. Gordon Ryan, Tom DeBlas. I mean, you name it. It is a phenomenal website loaded. I'm a customer first, guys. I was a customer. I gave this man my money. I'm a customer first. Who didn't buy the half guard domination? Come on. Everybody did.
A lot of people did.
Yeah, so I appreciate you coming in. Thanks. It means the world.
All right,
honestly.
thanks so much.
And I want to thank all of you. I want to thank everybody listening. Please leave reviews, like, and subscribe. And please go ahead and thank the sponsors. I want to thank a few of them now. Sig Sauer, Full Quartzin, of course, Right On Optics, Pulsar Thermal Imaging Technology, Galco Leather Holsters, all of them. There's a complete list on the website, and they play in the trailer. Please go like and subscribe to everything and give everything a watch. Go check out BJJ Fanatics. The links will be down below. I appreciate all you guys. We're going to sign out.